after a bank robbery, a boy allows himself to be captured by the police to go to prison, as his real goal is to escape with his brother, who is also there because he was sentenced to death for a murder he did not commit. That's why today episodes 1 and 2 of Prison Break. If you enjoy the videos, please support the channel by liking, subscribing, and enabling notifications. It's free and really helps me keep growing. Now let's get started. Let's meet Michael when he finishes getting his first tattoo. Only instead of something small, he decided to cover his entire body with ink, explaining to the girl who did it, because he doesn't have much time. So he goes to his office to pick up some newspapers, as if he had conducted a research. But he prefers to erase the information even from the hard drive before the big hit, as the next day he robs a bank. Although instead of doing things quickly, he prefers to waste time until the police finally arrive to arrest him. In a scene change, he pleads guilty in court despite his lawyer trying to help him, so he is sentenced to 5 years in a maximum security prison. But curiously, our protagonist seems to be happy with the decision. Now, in the place where he will spend his next years, he meets Officer Bellick, with whom he tries to be funny, but not so much that he gets punished. He notes his diabetes in his file. In his cell, he starts observing the other inmates. Upon seeing people arriving in a line, he realizes how they attack someone. A new inmate arrives in prison. Meanwhile, Veronica, the boy's lawyer, converses with her boyfriend, because it's strange that despite having tried to help him as best she could, he preferred to surrender to any sentence they gave him. The next day, Michael goes with his cellmate, Fernando, to the yard, where he learns how the prisoners are divided by gangs, as each one controls a part of the place. Although obviously there is nothing that the guards lose sight of from the towers. However, he focuses on the sewers, where he drops a magazine before asking for a prisoner named Lincoln, who he is advised not to look for, since he murdered the vice president's brother, so he is sentenced to die in a week. In addition, he won't be able to get close because the only way to talk to him is to get a job. But our protagonist will do whatever it takes to go with him because he reveals that he is his brother. Sometime later, we see a memory of when Lincoln was sentenced, even though he swears he didn't kill anyone because he thinks it was a setup. But back to the present, the boy helps his friend write a romantic letter to his girlfriend. At the same time, Michael's nephew goes with his friend to do something illegal because they want to sell drugs to get some money, unaware that the police are watching them to catch them. Shortly after now, Michael goes with a guy named Brucey to ask for work, only he doesn't get his attention, so he gives him a paper swan before leaving, asking him to think about it, to later visit the infirmary for his diabetes dose, where he meets Dr. Sarah, who coincidentally is the governor's daughter. When he briefly leaves, he uses the chance to place a paper swan in the sewer. Later, during a mass, the brothers finally reunite, so that the boy can tell him that he knows a way to get him out of there before his sentence. In a scene change, Fernando complains to his companion about the letter he wrote, as he doesn't believe his girlfriend will take it in a romantic way, until a guard appears to take the boy away because the warden, whom they call Papa, wants to see him. And then he asks why someone so educated is there, knowing he is very intelligent, in addition to knowing that he is an engineer. And even though he put in his data that he is unemployed, he asks him for help with the construction of wooden sticks, in exchange for giving him 3 days off outside the yard to be away from the others, something that Chico prefers to reject because he couldn't carry out his plans that way. Days later, we see that Lincoln's ex-wife scolds her son for damaging his notes, saying that if it's because his father is in jail, he will have to go visit him. Meanwhile, Veronica visits Michael, expressing her suspicion about his plan and the non-coincidental nature of being in the same jail. Despite their history, as his brother's ex-partner and a lawyer, she offers to help him get out sooner. Our protagonist explains to her that he doesn't need it, because if she really wants to help him, she will have to look for the person she wants. Lincoln dead? Meanwhile, the Secret Service attends the bishop's church, where he conducts mass in the prison, since he opposes the death penalty for our protagonist's brother. So the detectives try to convince him to step aside, because they need the sentence to be carried out without anyone interfering. They even threaten to charge him with fraud because he wants to avenge the murder he committed. Meanwhile, someone calls Brucey to tell him that they found a man who wants to. He received anonymous information about having a paper cyst. At the same time that Michael notices that the one who shot before the nurse got trapped in the courtyard notebook that he placed, discovering that all the sewers are connected. And then he goes to a guy who takes care of a cat to tell him that he met his wife, managing to answer correctly the questions that he asks him, even though he tries to deceive him. But as he sees that he really met her, he talks to him with confidence. However, Abruzapa and his men soon interrupt their conversation to extract the information. And like our protagonist, he won't tell him anything in exchange for what he wants. It starts in a fight that ends with the guard shots. As a result, the Pope punishes him with 90 days of isolation. But being something that could harm his plans, he convinces him to forgive him in exchange for his help with the structure. In a scene change, we see how the bishop is murdered during the night. So upon finding out, Veronica realizes that maybe Michael is right, so she begins to investigate the evidence against Lincoln. At that moment, his family visits the sentenced man to inform him of the boy's arrest, to give him some advice on how to be a better man, which obviously he doesn't want to hear from someone who is behind bars. To me, you're already dead. Later, Michael goes to the doctor for his diabetes dose, although she explains to him that his body's results are as if he didn't have the disease, which is true because he is administering the treatment without needing it, despite starting to suffer the consequences, such as tremors or tingling. On the other hand, we see Fernando worried because he has a conjugal visit with his girlfriend. And when it seems like he's losing hope, she arrives to tell him that she does want to be his wife, having a moment of passion, making love. Only that when it's over, he gets jealous when he hears that a friend named Hector took her home. Now, our protagonist goes to a man who can get him an insulin blocker, which he needs to counteract the effects of the diabetes medication. Then, in his cell, he receives an identification because Brucey gave him the desired job. As a result, he can now be close to his brother. After talking briefly, he tells him he has the perfect escape plan, exploiting the uninformed. Since a few years ago, they did a remodeling in the prison, which was secretly done by his engineering firm. But he didn't just see the plans, he camouflaged them within his tattoo. At the beginning of the next episode, Jedrez plays with the Catman, to whom he tells that he plans to get out of here before his sentence is over, without explaining that he wants him to join him because he says he is a legend as a pilot. They are interrupted by a frequent gang disturbance. He then looks at his tattoo and finds a man named Justo, when a surprise raid arrives in which they will examine the cells for illegal things, of which Fernando has many, so he asks for help to throw them away, although Bellic catches him before he can get rid of a knife. But fortunately, the warden is there to blame another subject. In a scene change during Mass, the brothers talk about the plan, because the perfect place to start escaping will be the infirmary, as it has no surveillance. Although for that, he must wait for the other prisoner to get him the medicine, something that Lincoln sees a bit complicated due to the start of the gang war. But our protagonist has hopes that his ideas will be carried out correctly. He later visits the yard, searching for a specific bench he previously examined, as he must remove one of its screws using a coin, until who appears to be the owner of that area arrives, named Teabag, who offers him protection in his gang in exchange for becoming more than friends. However, Michael is obviously not interested, so he spends time talking to continue with his strategy. He leaves without completing his goal, despite being annoyed by it. On the other hand, Veronica is looking for the lawyer who defended Lincoln, in his case, to ask him some questions. But as the subject insists that he tried to do his job correctly, he only gives her a clue about someone with a criminal record, who might have more information. Sometime later, Teabag finds our protagonist again on his benches, discovering that he is there to remove a screw from one of them. So he takes it away from him, threatening to hurt him until a guard separates them. Meanwhile, Bellic enters his cell to inspect it, without anyone noticing, using a pencil to see what was the last thing he wrote in his notebook. The protagonist discusses their life sentence with Brucey and the possibility of escaping prison. So he needs to know someone who can make him disappear in case he gets out of there. Only he won't help him unless he gives him the complete information he needs. In fact, some men who appear to be from the mafia will visit him seeking the location of the person who informed on them, since there will soon be a trial in which he may possibly testify, and they need to silence him before that happens, or many will fall. Scene change. Gangs prep weapons for battle. Someone warns Michael to be careful. So he goes to T-Bag's cell to look for his screw without avoiding being discovered. He tells him he wants to join his side against the others, but he must prove his loyalty before receiving a weapon. The man who owes him the medicine is also watching everything. Later, Belly goes with our protagonist to ask him about the name he found. As expected, the boy pretends he doesn't know what she's talking about. Before going to the showers, where he follows the other prisoner to get the medicine, not expecting it to be a trap because he won't give him anything, because he doesn't want to make deals with a traitor who plans to join the enemy gang. Meanwhile, the defense lawyer visits Veronica with a video, with the intention of stopping the investigation, as it shows that it is really Lincoln who commits the murder. She confronts her ex-boyfriend, calling him a liar. He claims the video is fake because the man was already dead when he arrived to kill him, which implies that someone wanted to accuse him in order to leave no loose ends. Meanwhile, the Secret Service officers go to the defense attorney to make a claim. Why did he take the video without the court's permission, despite having the right to do so? They force him to reveal Veronica's name for an investigation. Inside the jail, they open all the cell doors to maintain order. Only the inmates take advantage to start the gang war, where some die, and even Michael is thrown from the second floor, which T-Bag's boyfriend takes advantage of to attack him with the screw, although he quickly takes it away, before being surprisingly saved by someone from the rival gang. When the guards stop the attack after a while, we see that the boy is in shock from everything that happened. The warden punishes them with 2 days confined to their cell. Despite everything, he uses the time to proceed with his plan using the screw. On the other hand, we return to Veronica's investigation when she goes with a woman, trying to ask about the informant that the defense attorney mentioned to her before, although she explains to her that she can't say anything because the boy is dead. Later, the subject's girlfriend calls her at the office, who offers to talk in a public place because she is afraid that they will attack her. So the lawyer goes to meet her to hear that someone murdered him, because just like Lincoln, she wanted to involve them in a crime they didn't commit. But her fear is so overwhelming that she flees, urging him to do the same. Interestingly, the Secret Service was watching them, because then one of them calls his boss telling her they're going to be in trouble. And Veronica continues with her investigation, so she gets permission to handle it in whatever way necessary. Anyone who is a threat to this is expendable. In a scene change, while T-Bag threatens Michael to avenge his boyfriend, he continues his plan, filing the screw to fit perfectly like his tattoo, with the intention of turning it into a key for the toilet screws. Later, when talking to the guy from the other gang, he finally hands over the pills, because seeing that he fought with the guy before dying, he realized that he can trust him. Just then, a guard arrives to take him to the infirmary, where Dr. Sarah gives him an examination to check if he really has diabetes. Thankfully, the test result is positive due to the timely medication he took. Only she doesn't understand why he is happy with that diagnosis. So he leaves to be intercepted by Belly, who leads him into a trap as Brucey sends his men to interrogate him, because he wants the information he needs, even if he has to cut off a finger to get it. This was episodes 1 and 2 of Prison Break. Don't forget to like, comment on what other movies you want to see on the channel, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss the next videos.